Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to another installment in my quest to read 1001 books by female authors before I die. If you're not familiar, this project was inspired by Sandy's project from Miss Reads a Lot. I will leave a link to her explanatory video down below. But basically, she reads 1001 books of these lists. You know, you have these books, 1001 books you have to read before you die. And I thought that was a fantastic project, but those books feature, I would say, 80% male, and most of them are white. And I'm just not interested in those books anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with reading those, but it's not for me. I read a lot of male authors, so I'm now concentrating, as you can see from this channel, on female authors. But anyway, so I made my own list, exclusively female authors, trying also to incorporate, authors from the global south, not only Western authors, as far as their translations, because I do want to read books exclusively in English. If you want to have a look at the list, there's a Goodreads shelf where I have all the 1001 books, and 2 shelves where you can check what I read already and what is there to be read. Of course, I included also books that I had read previously. So it's not that I started from zero. But anyway, so this is the project, and I pick books every month, and then I talk with you about it and update you. So let's see how I did in November and which books I will pick for the last month, or had picked, because the month is already halfway gone when I'm filming this video, because I was absent for a week, so I'm like running behind with my video schedule. But anyway, so in November, I will talk about the books in a little bit, but just the numbers. So I read a total of 6 books in November, which brings the 2022 total to 64, and which means that I have 563 unread books, so to read, and that I read 438 books. If you follow my channel and these videos, you know that I want to start the new year 2023 with 560 unread, so to read. And I think I'm going to make it, because it's only 3 more. But what about the books that I actually read in November? A lot of nonfiction, because I try to also do nonfiction November. And oh yeah, my list with the 1001 books, if you follow me, you know that it's fiction and nonfiction. So most of the list that you can buy in book form is only fiction, but I incorporated fiction and nonfiction. And the first one is actually nonfiction that I read, and that is Thank You for Not Reading by Dubravka Ugresic. And the book was translated from the Croatian by Celia Hawksworth. This is a collection of essays about Ugresic's experience with reading, with the publishing industry, and it was published in 2003 in English, and in 2000, I think the original was even Dutch. So Ugresic is a contemporary writer born in Croatia, but she's not labeling herself as a Croatian writer. I think she is talking about post-Croatian or European or something, but yeah, doesn't matter. But anyway, so this, I love the cover, by the way. So this is about reading and her experiences. And I have to say, it was good. It was okay, but it didn't grab me, and that was had more something to do with the format. So not with Ugresic's thinking or writing, but I expected essays. So it's my wrong expectation, basically. I expected essays, but it's more columns, like columns you would see in a newspaper. So quite short, and that is just a form that I can't consume in 50 of them or so. one after the other. That's just not, it feels very repetitive. And also I want to now I want to have more. So I'm like demanding. So it's not a bad book if you are into that type of very short form essay, column like, then I think that is for you. But for me, it just didn't work 100%. The next one was actually fiction and a buddy read with Courtney from Courtney Ferreter, who just is ignoring me, telling her that she has to come back to BookTube. But there's a new year coming up, so we'll see about that. And we read this collection of short story, Middleman by Bharati Mukherjee. Bharati Mukherjee is an Indian-born author, but writing in not only in English, but living in the US. And this collection was published, I think, in the 1970s. Let me check. Oh, no, 1988, a little later, 1988. But it's more than 20 years old. And all the stories center around the migrant experience, but not only from India. So there are migrants from the Philippines, Tamils, there are migrants from Indonesia, there is somebody from a young woman from Trinidad. So it varies from various backgrounds, and how they deal with the migrant, the immigration experience. Some are from a female perspective, some are from a male perspective. I have to say, and I think Courtney agrees with me, I hope you don't mind that I mentioned you agree with me, but we liked the female perspective better. And for me, it was a good collection. There were some stories that I really loved and others that were kind of, okayish. It was interesting to see how an author in the late 1980s would talk about immigration, with now we have all this idea of own voices and cultural appropriation. So can she, as an author not from Trinidad, really talk about the Trinidadian experience? In the 1980s, we didn't have that. We didn't think that way. So that was also interesting to see how things have changed in terms of what we write about. But yes, if short stories with that context and contents appeal to you, I think this is a good pick. And yeah, like I said, it's always with short stories, not every story is equally good. That's always. The next one, again, was a nonfiction. Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Gathering Moth, A Natural and Cultural History of Mosses. This book was also the pick of, it was published in 2003. I'm just checking this. This was also the pick for November for the book Naturalist Book Club. The book club run by Heidi from My Reading Life and Doris from All the Books, where they pick a book about nature each month, and they already have their 2023 list. So for all the 12 months, so you can check them out. I will leave links to their channels down below, and you can see the announcement in both their channels for the 2023 list, so you can already prepare. I think it's really good that, for me, I really appreciate that they announce the list of all the books already before the year even starts. But this Robin Wall Kimmerer is an indigenous author, researcher, and she researches moss. I'm not a scientist. I'm not interested in moss per se, but she made it interesting, and she made connections with things that I could understand. So, for instance, when she talks about all the wildlife, the tiny little creatures that live in the mosses, she compares it to the rainforest. And you immediately have an image. And that helps people like me, the non-scientists, to understand what she's talking about. And she makes always the broader experience. And I think it's fantastic, and the writing is wonderful, and it's just very soothing, also very positive. It's a book with a lot of positive energy, so I loved it. Then I also read A Bite of the Apple by Lenny Goodings. I talked about this book already quite a bit. So it's the memoir of Lenny Goodings, talking about her experience with Virago Press. Virago Press was founded as a feminist press in the 1970s, and Lenny Goodings worked there first as a publicist and then later as an editor and as a publisher. And she talks about her own life, but also her life in and with Virago. I thought it was really, really interesting and engaging, and I love to read about bookish stuff. So, about what ideas the publishing industry had back then, and how few women were published. So, yeah, if this is something, and it's a bite of the apple, because the apple here, you can see it, is Virago's logo. You can, by the way, wonder where the Apple computer logo came from, which was invented 2 years later, because it looks exactly the same, just in a different graphic format. But anyway, that's story for some. I was just wondering. Another nonfiction I finished, and I already talked about it extensively, is this one, The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. I read this as a buddy read with Sandy from My Reading Life, who also already uploaded a review. So this is the story of Elizabeth Packard in the Victorian age, who was too independently thinking for her husband. So he had her committed to an asylum. And Sandy and I, we both concluded that if we had lived back then with that husband, we would have ended up in an asylum as well. So, and then it's her struggle to get freed, but also to change the law, how you can be committed to an asylum. So it's not, back in that day, if you were married, you had no rights at all. If your husband felt you should be committed to an asylum, you ended up in an asylum. It's infuriating to read about it, but it's important. So please pick up this book if you like nonfiction and history of women. Really good, really, really good. And the last book, the sixth book I finished in November, was also nonfiction, a memoir, Fault Lines by Mina Alexander. Mina Alexander was, let me check the publishing date, because that is quite some time ago, 1993. Yeah, Mina Alexander was born in India. She's a poet, and she lived all over the place. So Fault Lines is the breaking points in her personal history, but also the migration history, how you can have a continuation of your life with all these various breakpoints. It is, I think I said that when I talked about this book in a recent reads. It's not your straightforward linear memoir. It is more reflections than dates, and it's more topic oriented than event oriented, and it is a very densely packed writing poet. But I thought it was fantastic. I really liked it. But you need to take your time if you want to pick this up. But I can certainly recommend this. So those were the 6 books in November, which, like I said in the beginning, so now I have 3 books left to read if I want to make the 560 for 2023, because I definitely will continue with this project. And I picked 3 books, but there are also a couple of leftovers that might even put me a little bit ahead. So the book that I picked is Angela Carter's The Passion of New Eve, also because this is a pick for In Real Life book club. So I will certainly, hopefully, read this for the book club in December. It's my first Angela Carter, and it's about I will just read you. New York has become the city of dreadful night where dissolute Layla performs a dance of chaos for Evelyn. But this young Englishman's fate lies in the arid desert where a many-breasted fertility goddess will wield her scalpel to transform him into the new Eve. Sounds weird, but interesting. So we'll see how I fare with my first Angela Carter. And then I already talked about this book in my last recent reads. I still have Doris Lessing, The Golden Notebook, which is on the list and which I will certainly finish in December. The book about Anna Wolf, a writer who has trouble getting her life together and writes in 4 different notebooks, fragmented as her life is as a writer, as a political activist. She's a member of the Communist Party, her past in Africa, her relationships. So this will be finished. And I will picked up as a buddy read with Kathleen. If you follow my channel, you know that Kathleen and we read feminist literature, mostly nonfiction, sometimes a little bit of fiction. And for December, we picked this one, Angela Davis, Women, Culture and Politics, which is a compilation of her writing on women, culture and politics. The book was published in 1989, I think, if I remember correctly. Yes, 1989, but that's not the writing date of all the essays. There's one other book on the list, on the 1001 Women list that I have already read, Women, Culture and Race. And this is the second one, sort of complementary book. I'm really looking forward to this compilation of, I think it's more than 20 essays, it's about on women and the pursuit of equality. It's on international issues and on education and culture. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this with Kathleen and discussing this with Kathleen. So like I said, there are a couple of leftovers, books that I picked previously but didn't read. So we'll see how maybe I get one of those in, but I want to focus on these 3 so that I can hit the 560 book mark for next year. Anyway, so this is my update on this project, 1001 Books by Women I Need to Read Before I Die. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.